Robert Plank Show, episode 360. Don't buy a duck. Plan, execute, track, measure, adjust, and grow with strategic marketer Derek Champagne. Hey everyone, and thanks for listening. We're talking right now with Derek Champagne, and his book is Don't Buy a Duck, and his website is don'tbuyaduck.com. And Derek has developed and managed brands and marketing campaigns in multiple industries, from startups to household names. And he has pioneered marketing strategies in the medical and dental communities and has used his 20 plus years of advertising, branding, and marketing experience to build a formidable business. He is a frequent guest lecturer at business conventions and college business marketing classes covering marketing and social media subject matter. Sounds like we're going to have lots of fun stuff to talk about. So, Mr. Derek, how are things?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on the show today.
I'm glad to have you on. And so, can you kind of tell us about like who you are and what this "Don't Buy a Duck" thing is all about?
You bet. If you don't mind, I'm going to start back in my early years, if that's okay.
Let's do it.
I am the son of my parents were touring part-time musicians in the 70s and the 1980s, and so I fell in love with connecting with people and marketing at a very early age. I was on stage for the first time at 3 years old, singing with them, working sound for them as they toured, and just was really acutely aware of the need to be relevant and booking shows and all those kinds of things. So I was just wired that way. So by the age of 12 years old, I had my own musical act, and I was with my brother. And so we were doing little tours. My mom and dad were kind enough to drive us around. And I started developing my marketing and my entrepreneurial skills early on at that time. So fast forward to 18, I had my first bulk mailing permit while other kids were getting in trouble, and I probably was some too, but I was focused on, yes, now I can go and send mass bulk mail outs out. That was what I was excited about. So I was going to the post office and sending 200 media kits out a month, and I bought my first franchise at 18 years old. And so I was really wrapped up in business and marketing for a long time. Fast forward a few more years, and I had the opportunity to be in Hollywood, California, and do music marketing out there. I was performing out there, playing out there, but also managing bands and acts. So that was my focus for many years. I had the opportunity a few years later to make a switch in careers and go into the dental and the regular general marketing fields, and I did that. And so I started my agency in 2007. So we're celebrating 10 years this month, and had the opportunity to review and look at over 1,000 brands. That's how I got my basis for writing my book, Don't Buy a Duck. And Don't Buy a Duck talks about how to stop wasting money and only do marketing that works. That's the premise for the book, and it is all about the crisis points in marketing that we've found over the last several years and in my years of business and as an entrepreneur, in what common mistakes that businesses make that, when corrected, make them a lot more effective and confident in their spending.
Well, super great. So there's a lot of fun stuff to kind of unpack in the book that I'm curious about. But it sounds like you kind of had the entrepreneurial stuff in your blood. With, you said like your parents were into that, and then you got into that at a young age. And sort of as you were explaining that kind of story, it made me realize that you're all about getting out there. And like you said, you went there and you were on stage or booking shows or doing these mailings. And it seems to me like there's a lot of people who like they think, or I guess they're technically business owners, or they say they're like an internet marketer, but for some reason a lot of internet marketers I've seen, at least lately, don't want to do the marketing. It seems like they're kind of caught up in the day to day, and they're writing a book, making a blog, or they're making websites, but not actually like getting themselves out there, not talking to people. I mean, are you seeing this kind of thing, or is this one of the mistakes? Like, I'm seeing a lot of marketers aren't actually marketing.
Yes, yes. A couple things. One is, yes, that's one, and the other one is kind of the shiny object of whatever the newest shiny object is. Is putting their time into that, and I see a lot of great example when you talk about, and thank you for pointing that out. People getting stuck, and we see many small businesses getting stuck on, I've got to write this blog, or I'm trying to write this content, and that becomes their primary focus. We like to step back and say, great, but what are you doing with that? What's the purpose of it? Are you making sure that you're getting all the value out of that? Is that where you should be putting your time even? But they might have read an article that that's what they should be doing, and that kind of changes their direction. There's just too many options for us. There was 5 marketing channels several years ago. Now we have more than 70 choices. There's just so many options for what we can do. So we like to suggest stepping back and looking at 5 different areas, and I can go into those if you'd like me to, Robert.
Yeah, let's do it.
Great. So these are the what we call the 5 crisis points in marketing. And we like to make sure these and keep in mind, these are not just things I made up. We work with startups all the way to household brands, and we work with some big companies too. And there's some common areas that we find adjustments that need to happen. So here they are. The first one is identifying yourself. That sounds so simple, but a lot of times when we see that things aren't working right, we look under and do an audit, and we find that our client or the business just really didn't understand who they were, really didn't understand their value proposition. In other words, what am I going to offer? What am I doing? What am I giving my customer that's a value that my competitor cannot easily duplicate? That's number one. We find this brand's Bermuda Triangle. I talk about this in the book, is where the brand just gets lost in themselves, in their competition, in their customers, understanding what they need. No, that can end today. The second thing is really understanding your target customer. And I'm talking about more than just a surface overview understanding. You want to look at them and understand, obviously, their gender, their income, their age, ethnicity, marital status, religion, education. What stage of life are they in? That will let you know what's important to them. What are their hobbies? Where are they geographically located? What are their buying patterns? Even political affiliations. Really sit down and understand your target. In a relationship, that's what you do, right? If you're in a relationship, if you're dating somebody, if you're married, you kind of have to do those things in order to get to know that person better. You need to do the same thing with your target customer. We've got a client that we love. They're a huge company. They're a household brand, and we work with 40 plus of the franchises regionally, and they refuse to call their customers customers. They call them friends. It's called friends first, and if you say the word customer in their presence, the meeting does not continue. It's about understanding what you would do for a friend. You get to know them, you know their preferences, you know their birthday, all those things. Similar with your customers. And the next thing is to actually have a plan. We find so many businesses, even some larger businesses, that don't really have a plan of where they're going to go next. And that might serve you well if you're in a training business or you've come up with a new technology or something exciting. But long term in your life cycle of your business, it won't serve you well. We work with brands that might be $100 million plus that haven't had a plan. And we need to go in with them. We say, great, here's where you're at in your life cycle. But to stay relevant, here's the things that you need to do next. And write out a step-by-step action plan. The last thing is your execution. We see so many good advertising campaigns. We see so many great venues, so many great messaging strategies that don't work because they weren't done consistently. So we'll go in and do an audit and we'll say, great. And someone will say, well, radio doesn't work or digital advertising doesn't work. That's a pretty blanket statement. So if you understand who you are and who your target is and understand your competition and you're running this campaign, why didn't it work? And a lot of times we'll hear, well, we tried it once. We didn't do it consistently. Okay, well, execution is everything. Execution and consistency is everything. So that's the last point, is making sure that you're executing consistently no matter what. As my friend Dr. Steve Graves says, he's a strategy consultant. And in some of these strategy and implementation meetings, he'll say, who's the number one on this? In other words, who on your team is responsible for this happening without fail? And that's what you want to make sure in your marketing too, is you have your team identified so that you know who's supposed to be the number one on executing so that nothing ever drops.
Awesome. Makes perfect sense. Very logical. And so,
Right.
did you say there were 5 crisis points? Because I think I only heard
Yep.
one, identify self, two, target customer, three, plan, and four, execution. Was there one in there I missed?
Yeah, and one of them is your messaging. To make sure that you understand when you understand who your target is to write messaging that's relevant to them, that makes emotional connection and is not just a blanket statement. So it's what we call our target segmentation. We divide the target up into their unique communication needs, which is easy to do when you've done a profile on them, and then make sure that you're having messaging and a conversation with them that's relevant to their world.
Awesome. And what's really great about this is it seems like it's very logical and step by step, and it kind of like unifies a lot of things that I've heard about that I kind of felt like I was more or less playing whack-a-mole, being like, okay, as far as like the identifying myself part, I'm like, okay, do we have our numbers right? Are we looking at sort of like month after month or year over year, like how these different projects are going? And then as far as like the customer, knowing that your customers are targeted right makes a lot of sense as well. And that's one of those things where I'd always heard for years and years like, oh, have a customer avatar and kind of imagine who the
Mm.
person would be. And that, I guess, that was an okay starting point, but it wasn't very helpful. But then kind of being able to look at, okay, well, here's the majority of people, like what their age are, and then based on that, here's kind of what their language is. Then, like I talking to baby boomers in a certain way, and they're worried more about retirement versus say like more millennials are more concerned with
Mm.
having fun or like traveling now or things like that. And so you're making a lot of things sort of click in my head. And as far as like have that right messaging, have that plan. That way, you're not just kind of drifting place after place. And then a lot of people have a plan, but don't actually have a way of executing it. Or like you said, they did it once and it didn't work. They ran
Mm.
Facebook ads one time, it didn't work. Well, it's like, well, run 50, run 100 Facebook ads. Let that go every day for a month, or get another team to do your ads, or get a coach or something. So a lot of these things
Mm.
are making a lot of sense, just as far as like some people either are just kind of drifting day to day, or they don't have that plan, or they're kind of hitting the wrong mark. So this is all making perfect sense right here.
Robert, that's a great point. Thank you. You said it better than I did. And the thing is, it's not supposed to be complicated. I feel like that's been my mission for the last few years. I speak at these different engagements, and my job is to, especially with all the campaigns that we've done across the country and with so many different clients, is look, here's the things we've identified, and if these are fixed, you are going to be a marketing expert. People a lot of times either bury their head in their sand and try to ignore marketing and advertising. Well, that's not going to help, or they try to outspend their bad decisions and hoping that spending more and more is going to fix it. That doesn't work either. And if I can mention one other thing that helps is understanding your competition. As you're looking for your voice and you're understanding your target customer, I want to also encourage people to understand their competition, similar to what we talked about with your target customer. And it's not so that you can copy your competitor. It's so that you know where there's a gap in the marketplace where your brand can squeeze in and take a market share and be relevant. So here's some examples for your competition. Do a research study on each of your competitors, your direct and your indirect competitors, and look at their communication strategies. What kind of messaging are they using? What are their testimonials and their online reviews? What campaign are they doing? Do they have an organized campaign? What are they blogging about? How many press releases are they putting out? Snapshot their social media and their engagement. Are they doing billboards, TV, print, direct mail, magazines? What kind of SEO and pay-per-click campaign do they have? What's their community involvement? What kind of promotional offers are they doing? Now, a lot of times when that hasn't been done, we've got customers or clients who are guessing. When we come in and do that for each client, and we look at all of their target or all of their competitors, we have a really good understanding of what we're doing well, of what we need to work on, and again, where our gap is, where we are unique. We've done that for ourselves, and we found out, oh, our unique value proposition is this because it cannot easily be duplicated, and we know that now because we see a snapshot of all of our competitors in the marketplace.
That makes perfect sense. And so when sort of doing that research on the competition, do you have any advice on making that process a little less painful? Because I know that like early on, I made that mistake. I didn't look at my competitors, and then I was kind of guessing about what people wanted. And then when I started looking at what competitors were doing, I was always unsure about like, well, should I be looking into this myself, or should I be hiring someone else to give me like the cliff notes? And every time I was looking into what my competitors were doing, I either felt kind of like sick to my stomach, or like I've got to get caught up, or maybe like angry, like, well, they don't do as good of a job as me, but they're winning all this business. So I mean, did you go through any of that yourself, and do you have any advice
Oh,
for like how much to obsess over that competition?
yeah, absolutely. And when I listen, the research can get very, very detailed. I worked for a company at one point, LA Focus in Hollywood, and my wife and I both did actually for a while. And we got so detailed. If you remember the Ford Mustang when the new body style came out, if you remember the H2 when that new body style came out, when the Jaguar new body style came out, I saw those years before consumers did. We were doing real time testing, these massive campaigns where we were off road testing in Malibu and with these iPads before they existed, but we were using them, and in real time getting data. When you turn this way, how do you feel? How do you feel about the competition? We'd have them drive all the competing cars. We're not talking about that. And so we're talking about something much simpler and easy to do. So there's two currencies that you have with your business. It's either your time or money, right? So if you're a small entrepreneur starting out, this is probably going to be you doing it, or have a virtual assistant help you, or an intern. It's not an exhaustive process. So that's the first thing. The actual process of doing it is really just go and snoop. Go and snoop on what they're doing and snapshot it and put in a central document, and you'll find commonalities. Now, the mindset is another thing. The mindset, Robert, I can relate to that as a small business owner, as an entrepreneur. It does make us sick sometimes, or defensive, or proud of what we're doing. I'm encouraging I'm encouraging everybody to do this strategically and not emotionally. And I talk about this in my book, and I think this serves well. I learned this from Dr. Randy Leas, who was my first client 10 years ago, and he's still with us. He was a mentor to me, very successful businessman, and he talks about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And this is the mindset that's important when you're doing research or when you're doing marketing. If you can picture the triangle, and anybody can Google Maslow's hierarchy of needs and see this triangle, when you're operating from the bottom of the pyramid of the triangle, you're really in survival mode. You make emotional decisions about your business instead of strategic. That's not a good place to be. You're doing physiological needs, which is more your breathing, your food, your water, your shelter, your clothing, your sleep. That's survival, right? I want to operate my business and my mindset and my research in the strategic category. That's the top of the pyramid. See, operating from the bottom of the pyramid served us well when we were cavemen many, many years ago, and we were fighting the woolly mammoth, and we were survival for fire and water. We don't have to live like that anymore. When you live from the top of the pyramid, here's what the top of the pyramid is. It's self-actualization, it's morality, creativity, spontaneity, acceptance, experience, purpose, meaning, inner potential. That's the strategy and intentional side of making decisions. So when you operate that way in Maslow's hierarchy pyramid, you can do things like your research and all of those things from a non-emotional standpoint. And knowledge is power, especially when you operate from that kind of self-actualization.
And that sort of ties into like it seems like the older I get, the more I realize that most things I feel are sort of either like useless or just sort of like the caveman brain rearing its head. And so the more that like sort of like when they're applied to like the caveman scenario, like you said, like just trying to like kill the buffalo and grab some meat and live one more day, that made sense. But in this day and age of having to move so fast and building a business and looking at competitors, it's like some of these emotions that we have are kind of like the wrong things to be feeling, and we can't really get rid of them or things like that. We can either use them as fuel or just like lately, even the last couple of weeks, I've been realizing that just knowing why I have like that sick feeling or that angry feeling or the fear feeling, just knowing that okay, there's a reason why I'm feeling that, but it's because I'm running that kind of out of date software, has been really helpful. And that's what I'm kind of hearing from you when you say that there's the survival part of the brain and then the strategic stuff, and we need to be more kind of enlightened and strategic and be like sometimes like take the emotion out of the decision making or out of the actions that we take. So really good stuff. And one thing that's been kind of hanging over my head in our conversation is the book's called Don't Buy a Duck. So I'm really curious, what the heck is a duck and why don't we want to buy it?
Yeah, that's great. So that happened. I have a real duck experience, and I talk about in the book saying if you bought a real duck, you can understand. Otherwise, here's my example. I think I was 8 years old, and my mom had one of these cars here in the United States where every car she bought had the same feature. When she would drive by a yard sale, that car would turn and park, and the doors would fly open, and Mom wanted to go out and shop. She was a bargain shopper. So at 8 years old, my brother and I were driving in this big Oldsmobile station wagon. If you remember back in the day in the 80s, the wood panel station wagon vans.
Yeah, and the huge door in the back.
Oh yeah, yard sale chariots. Let me tell you. Yeah, and even the window, the electric window, when you had a fancy one that rolled up and down there, and then that big door. Yeah, you got it. And that was a great cross country vehicle. And so that was our yard sale chariot, and we went to this yard sale, this big estate sale, and I walked around the corner. I had $5, my brother had $5, and burning a hole in our pocket. We walked around this corner, and the stars aligned. I saw I had to have it, just random. First time I ever had an impulse buy. There was a duck, an actual duck, and it was sitting there alive in this church gym at an estate, at this big sale, and there was a little string tied to its foot. I said, Mom, I want that duck. And I went to my brother. I said, hey, let's pool our money and let's buy the duck. And I convinced him, which was my first sales experience as well, because he went for it. And my mom said, are you sure you want that? She knew something I didn't. We didn't have a farm. It wasn't we needed. And I said, I have to have it. I need it. And so we bought it. And we got it in the car, put it in a box. And you know that feeling you get when you've made an impulse buy and you just start to get that buyer's remorse? That pit in your stomach. We've all experienced it. Some of us more than others. I've had it many times. That was my first experience with it. And about that time, this duck flew out of the box and went crazy in our car. It felt like an albatross to an 8-year-old flying around that car, almost wrecked the car. We were able to pull over to the side of the road. We were close to our house, and we had a neighbor's pond there, and we put it out. We named him Quackers, and we let him live out his days there at the pond. That was my first realization that I bought a duck. And that's the analogy I use in my lectures. This analogy I use with my clients is don't buy a duck. Don't make impulse buys. Don't buy shiny objects just because you think you need them. But so many times, entrepreneurs, business owners, we either get hit with a referral in our mastermind groups, in our web online groups, and email, in with friends, with patients or customers calling us to sponsor things, to the radio, to the TV people calling and stopping by every week. And there's so many things, and I call all of those ducks if you don't know that you need them. And so the whole story is don't buy a duck. Stop wasting money. Take a few minutes. Understand the principles that I lay out in the book that are really some things that we've highlighted today. And then when you spend, you're going to make sure that you're making better decisions confidently, I might add as well.
Awesome. And so like when you're trying to make those kind of decisions, I'm really curious about your thought process because it seems like sometimes the business takes a life of its own and I have to go back and say, "Oh, well this thing sort of took a turn and I kind of either I don't like the way that the business has morphed or I do." And then there are other times when I say, "Okay, well I've got these, kind of projects that I'm rocking and rolling and sometimes I want to, keep those going because I don't want to like start stuff and not finish it. But then other times I feel like that kind of fear of missing out of like,
Mm.
if I want to take on some other projects because I want to grow and expand. And so, I mean, how do you make those kind of decisions when it's like, do I keep going on the path or do I change course? Is it just a matter of like going through those five crisis points or is there something special as far as your decision making process?
Great question. Thank you. The five crisis points are the starting point to even have confidence to market properly. That's getting through an audit. That's setting your business up properly to manage and be healthy. Here's what I use. A couple of things. One, obviously, is if you see a business opportunity, you take it. But I am guilty of FOMO that you mentioned, that fear of missing out. And for many years as an entrepreneur myself, I would do okay with a project and get excited about the next one. Suddenly, I'm trying to run 50 things. You just can't be effective with that. We found the best way is to build a good plan, continue with it. And so here's an acronym that I created, and I share this in the book as well. I think I have a whole chapter on it. It's called PETMAG, PETMAG, PETMAG. Plan, execute, track, measure, adjust, grow. We follow that without fail with all of our plans, with all of our projects. Plan, execute, track, measure, adjust, grow. And in these categories, within these different sections of PETMAG, are when you can make decisions to make adjustments. There's an adjustment category on step number 5. And so, yes, if you need to make adjustments, do it, but don't do it in 1 and 2. Don't do it during the plan and execution. And you should have it in the plan. If it's not in there, and unless it's a giant life-changing market opportunity, wait until the adjustment phase and get traction on what you're doing now. We follow something called the 12-week year here. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's Brian Moran's book. And
Actually, that's next up on my Audible reading list. That's
you,
funny you mentioned it. I bought it the other day, just haven't started it yet.
it has number one, not only has it changed our business personally, and I'll tell you how, as a distracted, I call myself a visionary, right? Other people might say that I'm distracted, but I do know what the end in mind is. I have it very clearly. I just have 3 or 4 ways I think we can get there, and I'm trying to show patience with my team sometimes to make sure we're speaking the same language. The 12-week year allowed me as a CEO, as a founder, as a visionary, again, self-proclaimed, to be able to have my sales team. I have a sales team, to have them be on the same page with me. We adapted the 12-week year, so now we're all on the same page with the same program. And we're on our third 12-week year and now our fourth, and we've hit our numbers every time. And so we are doing this PETMAG plan: execute, track, measure, adjust, grow, and we don't stop until we've hit the end of that quarter or our 12-week year. And that helps us stay focused. And you can move the ball down the field. I use sports analogies often, even though I'm a casual sports fan, because it's just such a great example. We're quarterbacking our campaigns and we're making first down, first down, first down, first down, first down, first down, first down. That's how we get to the end zone and actually make accomplishments with our objectives. We do that without fail. We're considered execution specialists. It's a big focus for us. And execution, you have to have consistency. And this helps you do that without getting distracted.
Perfect. So plan, execute, track, measure, adjust, grow, and that's really great. And like you said, that's perfect because you there's the adjusting in there, so that way you don't kind of let things slide, you don't let things get away from you. But then also because that comes after the execute and the tracking, you actually give things a chance to take hold. You give that a chance at traction, and you kind of avoid that entrepreneurial ADD of all starting all these ideas but never finishing. And I mean,
Right.
and we're all guilty of that. So
Oh yeah.
great stuff. And we mentioned the book a bunch of times in our talk. So can you let us know kind of where people can find that book, as well as any other websites that you want to share if you feel like it?
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, if you go to don'tbuyaduck.com, then you can find the book. You can find it on Amazon as well. And that's a great spot to go, though, is don'tbuyaduck.com. We have a video trailer about the book. And I'm really excited about this book. Seth Godin did an endorsement on it, and it's done very well. It's made a great impact so far. And it really is my conversational approach. It's 100-something pages. It's an easy read. It's not meant to be cumbersome. It's meant to be digestible and executable as quickly as possible. And then one other website that we have is champagnemarketingcourses.com. That's a new course that we have coming out. I'm excited. My wife and I are co-branding together on this. She's a marketing research expert about the research categories we talked about today, and we're teaching everything we know about building your brand and building a marketing campaign. It's a 2-week course. You have a certificate at the end of it, and we're super excited about that. That comes out, I think, in 60 days, but we have an early sign-up bonus on there right now. And we also have a free download at champagnemarketingcourses.com, which is a guide to improving your conversion, your communication with your target clients. And that's a video series that we email free to your inbox each day.
Super cool. So it sounds like anyone who needs to kind of up their game with their marketing, or maybe if like certain things that they used to do or learn fell by the wayside, or they just need to, dominate their competition, make sure to go to champagnemarketingcourses.com to get those courses, and then also be sure to get that book, don'tbuyaduck.com. Stop wasting money and only do marketing that works. I think that that's good advice that we all need to hear, because we all have kind of that dream that we started with, and many times we say, oh, I forgot to have time for my marketing, or it seems like other people are out marketing me. So maybe it's time to go back and look at those marketing fundamentals, look at what you're not doing, look at if your plan is wrong, your people are wrong, or whatever it is. So don'tbuyaduck.com to grab the book, also on Amazon, and champagnemarketingcourses.com. And I want to thank you so much, Mr. Derek, for stopping by and sharing all this really awesome marketing and business knowledge with us today.
Man, Robert, I love what you're doing. Thank you for what you're doing with the show. Your listeners are lucky to get to hear you each day. And thank you for including me and letting me be a part of your show today.
Thanks for listening to today's program. Start from the beginning or view past episodes at robertplank.com/episodes.